People ask me how long has your family been farming? I figure probably since Adamish. There was an ancient philosopher at one point that said, a man who has his health can have 1,000 goals. A man who does not only really has one goal.
What does clean eating mean to you?
Clean is as close to the way God made it as is possible.
If somebody asked them for some words of wisdom about homeschooling,
Don't stress it and don't feel like you have to be qualified. That's not really what makes homeschooling good or not. It's the relationship and the interaction that you have with the children in a learning environment. There's
right?
not a perfect system,
No,
and there's not even a broken system. I mean, as long as you're doing it,
that's right.
as long as they learn how to read and how to learn, you've pretty much got it.
Hey, Mom, it's Trish. Every conversation, every story, and every resource I share has one purpose: to help you homeschool, not by adding more to your plate, but by offering creative ideas and resources to awaken your child's sense of wonder. Because homeschooling isn't just about curriculum, it's about building a love of learning, discovery, and lifelong memories with your family. God has called us for this task. So take a deep breath and welcome to the greatest adventure of your life. Let's do this together.
Good afternoon. It's Trish with Homeschool Conversations, and I am here talking with David Stelzer from Azure Standard. This is our second conversation, and I wanted to spend a few minutes getting to know David again. So, just in case you hadn't seen the first one, hello, David. How are you?
Hey, how's it going here?
I'm really, really good. Try to get through this tornado damage, but we're getting there. So, David is the not the founder, but the president and CEO, I guess is the title of Azure Standard. So walk us through Azure, because this is a fascinating company that keeps evolving, but start us kind of at the beginning with this is actually a generational farm, right?
Yeah, it's a multi-generational farm. People ask me how long has your family been farming? I figure probably since Adamish. Um,
Right.
as far as I know, there was never any breaks. My granddad was the first one to come to America and farm here. My dad was a farmer, and he's the one that switched to organic farming. I am actually the one that founded Azure per se.
Oh,
Um,
interesting. So you are the founder of Azure. Okay. Okay. Good to
I'm
know.
the founder of Azure, but not of the organic farming and of the farm.
Okay. Okay.
That's multi-generational. We've got 5 generations on the farm right now.
Crazy. That is
Um,
amazing. So you have grandkids and kids and you,
well, yeah, technically not through me. Through my sister goes 5 generations.
okay.
So
Okay.
my parents. So my mom is still living. My father did pass, but my mom is still living. My sister, and then she has grandchildren and great grandchildren
Wow.
that are
That's
all
amazing.
on the farm, or
Wow.
at least some of them are all on the farms.
That's amazing. I love the concept of multi-generational. We have a few fewer acres than y'all do. Just a few. We have 42. Y'all, he has way more than that. How many do y'all have?
4,200-ish.
Yeah. So we're
About 4,000 actually, yeah.
wow, that's crazy. So yeah, they have lots of room. If you I mean literally y'all could spread out and never see each other probably if you wanted to.
Well, the farm's not 100, not all the acres are contiguous. We have about 2,000 that I live on anyway, that's contiguous.
That's
And the
wonderful.
rest of it is in various chunks throughout the area.
It's amazing.
So
So multi-generational, 5 generations. And so where did Azure come from? How did that one, how did you, did they, I mean, I think you told us the story about Red Mill, right?
yeah, so Dad, when he started farming organically, he was selling to Bob's Red Mill.
Yeah,
He and Bob knew each other. They were contemporaries.
that's so cool.
But we lost that market in the late 80s, well, about 87-ish, I guess, 86, 87. There was no market anymore because of some changes in retail that Bob had gone through. So I started going out and trying to market our grain, mostly to co-ops and health food stores and things like that initially.
So you started as a
And
salesman. I mean, I'm sure you were farming too. You probably farmed your whole life, but you were also out there selling too.
yeah, I was selling. I didn't know, I never would have called myself that. I never knew that that's what I was doing even. I was just trying to find where the product, people who
Made
actually,
sense.
I was just trying to connect people who care about the food
Yep.
with farm products that I knew were good.
There you go.
And
You're still
truthfully,
doing
in
that, by the way.
many ways, that's exactly what we still do to this day. It's not all off of our farm anymore, although we still have plenty of product from our farm.
Right.
You know, we connect people who care about the food they eat with a lot of farmers that care about the food that they grow. I think that's really important. And where my passion is that we're really trying to make a difference in the health of families. You know, I feel like there was an ancient philosopher at one point that said, a man who has his health can have 1,000 goals. A man who does not only really has one goal.
That's right.
And, you know, I think so many of the issues that we have in this country and maybe throughout the world, if you get right down to it, a lot of them relate to health. Our health has been under attack. Our food quality has decreased substantially.
Mm,
We now have 55% of children, according to the current federal administration, 55% of the children, i.e., under 18 in the US, have some kind of a chronic disease.
that's sad.
That is sad and it's unacceptable. And we do not have to live like that. And Azure is here to do whatever that we can to change that trajectory. I
Yeah.
believe that our bodies can be healed and our land can be healed and the soil can be healed from our farms. And that we can only do that one family at a time by changing our diet, changing our lifestyle, and having a very dynamic and life-giving emotional and spiritual outlook.
Mm,
And if
very
we can do
holistic.
those three things, not only can we change the trajectory of our family, but we can do that. And as families do that, it will change the trajectory of our communities and eventually society as a whole.
That's
I
wonderful.
really I
I
really
believe
see
that too.
that as a primary mission. It's critically important and truthfully I've lived it. I've been there. You know, I think I mentioned to you last time we raised 11 children. Both
Homeschooled
my
them all.
homeschooled them all.
Hmm.
My wife and I both were sickly kids, so we made a very distinct decision on our diet and have eaten clean for about 40 years, super very clean. And none of our children had any issues from being sickly. In fact, we only had one doctor visit in well, in all of our children while they were in our household, we only had one doctor visit, and that was a broken femur.
Whoa. So,
So
can I ask you a question? What does clean eating mean to you?
clean is as close to the way God made it as is possible. So, here at Azure, we have a big list of prohibited substances. We publish a lot of that on our website.
Hmm.
Basically no highly processed foods of any sort.
Right.
And we make sure that the food that we do eat is not over processed even so, and that it is clean from the standpoint of agricultural inputs,
That's great.
i.e. organic, and or we know where it came from.
I'm actually going to be interviewing Karen in a couple of months. And one of the things that we're going to be talking about is how stringent you are with your vendor selection and your partnerships. And so, because I think that that speaks to your commitment to quality and to a product that you personally want your children to eat and therefore, would be good for other families.
And
So,
we've seen the results,
yeah.
and it's also happened, over and over with the families that that do change their diet. I have we have a lot of beautiful stories about that. But it does work. It's
Hmm.
not, there's no real mystery to it. we know that our bodies do respond to our diet, and there's maybe more to it than food. There's also physical exercise, there's lifestyle, and there's spiritual, emotional outlook. And there's also sometimes when we're depleted that we do need to get our bodies built up, ideally with supplements or herbal supplements and or vitamin supplements to get to a point where our bodies can actually
function again.
Yeah. So
there's so many. I actually have a ton of autoimmune disorders, and I fully believe that our so many people have them. I mean, that's like an epidemic of autoimmune disorders now. I have Hashimoto's, which is thyroid, and it's actually generational in my family. My mother had an inactive thyroid gland. I have brothers and sisters that have thyroid issues. So it's something that's been, in our family for a while. But I was the only lucky one to get Hashimoto's, which is the autoimmune version of it. I'm like, thanks. But anyway, I really do. And they say that if you have one autoimmune disorder, you have many. You don't just have one, you have a lot of them. And I do. I've had different ones over the years. And so that's when I really started looking into wanting to eat healthier and figuring out what was wrong, because when you go to the doctor, and I'm not going to bash doctors, but at the same time, I think our healthcare in America is very focused on symptoms rather than the root and, figuring out what's going on. And so for me, I always wanted, I started going to, homeopathic doctors and functional, and more traditional medicine, I guess, where they were trying to help me figure out the root. And so, and I think a lot of people are dealing with that. I think that's it's almost like a health journey. We're running it through all of America right now is on this really interesting health journey. And I think that's really why, and I think it's part of homeschoolers. I think a ton of homeschoolers are here. I think some people homeschool because of this, because their children have allergies or they have, issues where they're keeping their kids at home. And so they need to know about products and places that are so committed to doing what you're doing. And so that was one of the reasons why I really wanted to work with Azure and to get to know you. And I appreciate you coming on these podcasts and helping educate us on Azure, because I think that y'all have a fascinating story. And I love your products. I can sit here and open my drawer and just show, like tons of Azure Well and all the products that you're selling, because I'm a drop coordinator too now. So I don't know how to do anything little. I just jump all in.
Yeah.
So if y'all don't know what a drop coordinator is, y'all need to reach out to me and I'll explain what I do with Azure. And I'm not an employee, by the way. I don't work for Azure. So this is not an employee. I happen to love their products. And I think that's where a lot of drop coordinators come in, is they love the products and they want the products to be delivered near them. They want it to be convenient, and we want it for our communities. And so we kind of rally around. There's actually 3 families that are, quote, drop coordinators for us. And we just kind of rotate through taking care of, making sure that everything's taken care of every month. So, but anyway, I have to jump all in. So I'm an Azure supporter too on a different level. But talk to me about your homeschool. I'm fascinated. Y'all have 11 children and homeschooled them all. So how wide apart are they? How far apart in age?
I think about 24 years or so.
Your
from
wife
the oldest
did
to the
so
youngest.
Your wife did it so right. We were joking about this before we got on the podcast. I had all of my kids within 4 years of each other. So they all left at the same time. They all flew the coop at the same time. I was like, oh my gosh, what did I do? That was poor planning, very poor planning. But y'all have had this nice leisurely walk out. It's been a little longer. You actually have grandkids now, right?
Oh, yes, we have grandchildren. And actually, my wife is homeschooling 2 of our grandchildren now.
I love that. I love that.
In that case, mom needs to work and she didn't want to send them to school. So mom, and so she's just doing it 3 days a week, but still she's able to put together lesson plans for the other 2 days, and they do.
I love that.
They bring them to the house 3 days a week, and she does that.
That's also grandmama time. That was one of the things I love the most about homeschooling, has been the relationships with my kids. So now y'all get to see it again with the relationships with your grandchildren, because y'all are spending so much time with them. That's so precious. literally, I actually wrote 11 years ago about exiting the rat race and making a point of downsizing and right sizing and doing whatever you needed to do to be able to homeschool, because if your kids are going off to school somewhere, you only get 18 summers with them. And that terrified me. I was thinking 18 summers, that's all I get. I mean, because when they come home at night, they're busy with homework or their extracurricular activities, soccer or whatever they're into. And you just don't get a lot of time with them. And so that's the thing I love about one of the things, my favorite things about homeschooling was the relationships I was able to build with my children. So I know your wife has to love that. I'm just a little bit jealous.
Yes.
But just a little bit jealous. So what do you remember? Do you know the curriculum that y'all used? How did you homeschool? What was did you even use a curriculum? Because I know some don't.
We put together a variety of different curriculums. My
Yeah.
wife, as far as teaching him to read, that was always the very first thing. She liked this thing called alpha phonics. I don't know if you've heard of that one.
I have.
Anyway, that was her favorite. She pretty much, after the first one, all the rest of them, including the grandchildren, have all learned to read going through alpha phonics.
Oh, they have something common. I love that. Yep.
Alpha phonics, and then she does this spelling power thing.
Mm-hmm.
And then the math, a little different. She used Saxon math.
Mm-hmm.
That and just kind of walked through that. Some of the early math, Saxon math was, I think, she started like, I don't know, it's called 2-3 or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then the early math, she did a different one. I think it was a rod and staff product
Mm-hmm.
that she used for the early math. And then she also used some of that. She used some of the rod and staff stuff for the other subjects.
Interesting.
So that was kind of her hybrid.
So one of the things that I saw and I see a lot when you have a big family like yours, the older children also tend to help with the educating of the younger children. Did y'all use that concept at all, where there was like this, almost like this small schoolhouse in action over there?
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, they do. And a lot of times she even made that a part of some of the older children's school, is to listen to the younger children, for instance, read their alpha phonics or read their primers for their early reading books, that kind of thing.
Well, I have always said, and I did not start when my oldest two were little. I used to own, I think I've told you this last time, I used to own a staffing agency. I should be an IT staffing company. We were talking about my son. I have two sons that are in IT. And I owned an IT staffing company. And for, years, I was blowing and going. We were placing vice presidents at Walmart. I mean, we were, doing really well. But my kids are going to a little Montessori school down the road, which I loved. I love Montessori. I love the concept of Montessori. It's very hands-on, very touchy-feely, help them see it. And I just felt the Lord pulling me. I knew I needed to be homeschooling, and I just walked away. I gave it all up. Right-sized. I keep saying I right-sized my life so that we could do that. So, but yeah, that was one of the concepts in the Montessori world, was putting all the kids together. You had 3 age groups, and the older ones taught the younger ones. And that was like you said, that was part of their expectation, was to teach the younger ones, because it actually shows that they know the information if they can teach it, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, usually it's pretty big age gap between the teaching one and the, at least in our world it was, because, when our youngest was born, our oldest was like in her mid-20s, early 20s. We only actually had them all at home for about 5 months, I think. Our oldest got married about 5 months after our youngest was born. But
that's so funny. That's exactly how it happened with me and my sister. My sister is 18 years older than me. So she was going off to college, getting married, and I was born. So it was like, bye. she hugged me and then she left. So same thing, the exact same thing. So talk to me, how did because growing up on a farm is so different than growing up in, the city. So how did the farm feed your curriculum, or did it? Did y'all use the farm as part of it?
It was always this, I wanted to use it as the primary,
Right.
and my wife was pulling the other way a little bit. So we always had a little healthy friction on were they going to sit at a desk? So we kind of compromised at half days. So we always started first thing in the morning. They were doing the desk schoolwork, and then we would try to do that till lunchtime. And then after lunch,
They were yours.
yeah.
I love that. That's actually, for me, I think this the same way. I think that when you have, that was actually a very Montessori concept too. She used to call it the Erdkinder, by the way. And it was very much she felt that if you kept their minds and their bodies busy, that they didn't get in trouble. And so, it was also very healthy to be outside and doing. And she actually recommended raising them on a farm. That was actually how she did her middle and high school curriculum was on a farm. Isn't that funny?
There was a lot of different stages. When the children were real young, it was more like, they could go out and help a little bit in the garden or take care of the chickens and things like that. As they got a little older, so when my two oldest boys were like, I think they were 12 and 14, they decided well, even when they were a little younger, I think they were like maybe 10 and 12, they decided they wanted to plant a squash patch. So they broke ground and they grew it was about an acre probably.
That's a big garden. It's huge.
So just the two of them pretty much, and they set it all out. And the crazy thing was they were going to do winter squash because that's pretty easy, and they could sell winter squash. And the crazy thing was the seed company mixed up the seed, and one of the two squashes, instead of being a winter squash, was a summer squash. It was yellow straight neck.
Oh no.
So it's like, well, you can either cry about it or you can do something about it. So I took them around and they got to do that. I drove them around a little bit and they went to all the fruit stands and soup and stores and stuff in the area. And they peddled because there was no way I could sell that through Azure at that degree.
Right.
We just sold a little bit of it, but yellow straight neck, we never even carried it before.
See, they're creating new avenues for you.
New product.
That's right.
But anyway, so they went around and now they, and they got a lot of it sold. And so instead of it being a project where they basically pick it once and just keep it weeded and watered, you're picking it every third day. And that happens all summer long from about the 4th of July, or maybe it was more like the 8th or 9th of July, all the way basically until the mid-September.
That's great.
They were picking this squash like every third day, running their wagons out through that squash patch with, a little setup with their little fiber cloth to wipe it and make sure it was nice and clean. And then they were packing it in the boxes and
packing as they go. I love it. That's great.
Yeah. They had their little wagon set up and they would spit it's like every third morning. It was like a family project.
Aww.
Everyone had to go out. They recruited some of their sisters to help sometimes to cut and pick squash. But when it all came down to it, they ended up making probably 3 or 4 times more money off of the summer squash than they made off the other half of the patch that was the winter squash.
Well, because it was harder to find, I'm sure.
Well, yeah, and it was a harder sale and it was harder to find and it bears a lot more over the period of time. You get a lot more pounds.
Right. Oh, interesting.
A lot more work, but a lot more pounds.
Right. So they started the same way you did. They were out there marketing just like you did.
Well, I basically, I encouraged that a little bit and helped them do that. And so they did that for a couple of years. They did, and they actually, after that, they always planted some summer squash. Not all yellow. They did zucchinis and stuff later, but because yellow is a little bit of a hard sale. And they started doing some other vegetables. They did tomato patch and some other stuff for about 3 or 4 years. And then when they were about 12 and 14, they decided they wanted to put in an orchard.
Oh my
And
gosh.
we'd never done orcharding. That was new. Um, had a slight bit of knowledge, but I had an uncle that had worked on an orchard, but that's about as close as we'd come to it. And so I told them, well, if you've learned how, so they got inspired to learn how that orcharding worked. And so I laid out a piece of ground. You can have this basically 40 acres to put your orchard on if you want to, but you gotta prep it. You gotta put in, a lot of it was poor ground, had a lot of rock breakers and stuff. They ended up, so they had to learn how to drive a dump truck and a track hoe. And they picked up all these rocks. It was like 40, 50 dump truckloads of rock and
Good
stumps
grief.
and stuff that they took out of there. They had to build a deer fence all the way around it. And then they had to put a whole irrigation system in. And it took them about 2 years to do all of
That's
that.
such good learning right there. That is
And
such a great experience. Oh my gosh.
so they learned multiple things. They learned,
Yes.
they learned, equipment operation. They learned how to do fencing. They learned all the varieties of different kinds of fruit as they were researching that. They learned hydraulics and irrigation
Mm.
and how to gauge that, how big of pipes you need for the various amounts of water, how
That's
much water
volume.
goes
That's
out of.
math. That's volume. Yep.
So all that, yep. Math, we're not talking simple math either. You're
No,
talking, geometry and
that's right.
above type math to do all that. And the water hydraulics, because it went through a valley and it has to come back up. And how does that work? And how much pressure are they going to have at the high end versus the low end? And size their nozzles accordingly and the whole thing, right?
That's
All the
great.
things that an orchard, somebody who put in an orchard, say they actually learned 4 or 5 trades at the same time.
That's amazing.
And and
That's
during
good
that time,
stuff.
every once in a while, I still called on them on an extra big day to come over and pull orders at Azure. So
That's amazing. I
they,
love that. So they were very, very involved on the farm and using and the farm sounds like so you now sell apples and stuff out of the orchard, right?
out of that orchard, plus now they have actually planted and or bought. They actually have 5 orchards.
Wow.
So
Okay.
my oldest is now the chief operations officer at Azure. So he runs all the operations side, warehousing, logistics, including some agriculture. But my next son down, he now is involved. He runs all the orchards and the packing lines and agronomy and does all of that now.
That's
But
amazing.
now he's in his 30s. Well, I think he's in his early 30s anyway. Yeah.
So that is to me, that is the absolute best. So did they once they fell in love with, or did they fall in love with orcharding, running orchards and then wanted to grow it? Or was it, did they see the need? How did that come about for them to grow it?
Oh yeah, they saw the benefits. They also saw the need, and they were both pretty gung ho on growing the orcharding right along with Azure, so they
That's
could
so
supply
good.
the Azure pieces. And Azure's outgrown the apples and stuff, but we
Right.
pretty much kept up on cherries and pears.
That's
They're
amazing. That's
doing
so good.
pretty
I
much all
love
of
that.
that.
So were there other opportunities where other children brought in things like that? Did you have other kids that expanded a space or created a space that you didn't have?
Yeah, one of my daughters, she now has 2 retail markets. So she has two retail stores, the health food stores basically.
Oh,
And so I partnered her with her.
that's so
And so she started one over in Hood River. It's a little over an hour from here, but a little bit more of a yuppie community.
good.
And then,
So is it Azure or is it something she's doing totally different?
well, they're Azure branded, but they're called Farm Stand. She
Oh,
calls them the Farm Stand.
I'll have to
Farm
look them up.
Stand in the Gorge and Farm Stand in the Dalles.
I love that. So that is, to me, that's the epitome and the, where it comes full circle, where they learned it on the farm or in the farm or in their homeschool, and then they took it and used what they learned to continue it. So
And
that's so
then and
cool.
then one of my other sons, he runs the Ellie's Eden. And that was actually started by his older sister initially, which is all the plant starts. So he does greenhousing and plant starts, and he runs all that whole thing, the teams, the planting, scheduling, all of all of that. So
Which is a
he's
big part of a farm, especially your farm, because you have so much diversity.
well,
So
he basically has focused in on one section of the farm, being the greenhousing.
yeah.
So this is the portion of the farm that's under plastic, and we do all the starts with.
How many I've never asked you that. How many greenhouses do y'all have? How big is that space?
That space is 18 greenhouses. They're
Wow.
36 by 96.
They're huge. Okay. Wow. That was one
Yeah,
thing I lost.
he grossed well over 2 million out of that this year.
That's
He's,
fantastic.
just doing what he,
Loves to
and
do.
they're great value. And he's also gotten some of his younger brothers and sisters involved in helping that.
I
And
love
then my youngest daughter, and this is brand new, just the last couple months, she opened up a bakery.
that. Oh,
So, and her passion has been, she's loved kitchen stuff. She's loved baking cakes and breads and all this stuff. And so we helped her get a bakery started, but she's got all the, a building all set. She's got a little tiny retail space in front in downtown Doofer, which is tiny. Um, but then she's got all the stuff in the back. You'll be seeing some, you already see one of her products in Azure. She has like frozen cookie dough that's coming out of her
I
bakery,
saw that.
and
Matter of
that's
fact,
from my youngest daughter.
so I was being nosy.
She's my 20-year-old.
Oh, she's 20, so she's not that young. I was looking at the
Well, she's
orders.
been working on it for a couple years, but she's my youngest daughter. I have
Yeah,
two
yeah.
younger sons after that.
I was looking at what the orders were for the, that were coming in. So I could kind of plan, how much cold, how much, dry, how much, that we were gonna have. And one of them I saw some cookie dough in there and I was like, wait, they have cookie dough? So that's
Yeah,
getting to be on my list.
that was her her invention. That was her recipe, and she developed the recipe, developed the process, got the equipment, and she's doing the cookie dough now, and she will be starting some sourdough bread hopefully within the next 30 days.
Oh,
She
that's
has all the
fantastic.
ovens, she's got everything. She's doing about 100 loaves a week right now and selling them through the two farm stand stores.
Wow.
And so she needs to go up to probably 1,000 loaves a week to be able to supply Azure, but she thinks they can do that. So she's hired a couple people that she's training right now.
And
And
she's 20. Oh my gosh,
yeah,
that's so good. That's so good. I love that. Wow.
her cousin is doing it with her.
That's
That's
amazing.
about the same age. They both have been. Crystal's more the outgoing one, more the salesperson, the front end. Her cousin Brendolyn is her partner, and she's more the food scientist.
Oh, that
She's
is
the
so
back end side.
good. Oh my
And
gosh, I love
so
it.
that'll branch out, and those will eventually be, segments that Azure is able to supply product from and be divisions. But
That's amazing. That is, I absolutely love to hear that and to see how they literally are becoming a part of it and growing the family business, because it's I mean it's all of y'all's now. You just said, how many are COO and running different parts of your operations. So when you were growing up, did you do the same thing? Is that how you got really involved? Were you a part of the farm at that level too?
I was a part of the farm. My growing up is a little bit different in the sense I got thrown into it kind of from zero to cold turkey all at once when I was about, I guess I was in sixth grade, so I'd have been about 13, 14 years old, somewhere in there.
Mm-hmm.
But my dad got very, he got sick.
Oh.
He got some kind of a staph infection, it took him down for a year.
Oh, wow.
And so I got thrown in cold turkey. He brings me up, David, I can't plow this spring. You got to go do it. I'm like,
Wow.
I don't know how to plow. Well, it's not that hard. Here, I'll tell you how. And so but he couldn't really come out and teach me, so to speak, because he was too sick to even get out of the house.
Oh,
Occasionally he would have a little better day and he could get out and help me a little bit with not drive a tractor, but hook something up or whatever. But I kind of had to learn. So I never really stopped doing it after that.
right.
And then when I was 16, like 3 years later, my family went through a major crisis because basically the IRS attacked my dad.
I remember
So
that.
he went through kind of a big thing. And so I had to quit school and go to work for a neighbor to put food on the table for the family at that point. So I basically became very involved in the family economics starting at about 13.
That's amazing. Well, and sometimes, hardships like that can break you, but sometimes they can make you, they make us stronger and, build resilience and persistence. I know growing up and I'm just stubborn. I'm just so I'm just like, if somebody told me I couldn't do it, I was like, you hadn't watched. So so I think I have the persistence. I'm not sure it came from such honorable roots as yours did.
Well, I'm
But
not sure it was honorable, but we had to do what we had to do. But
right. Well, but you
but
were
one of the things that the fruit that's come from it in the long run has been really quite special because, if I look at it now, none of my children could be as far along as they are on their projects, even if they had started them, if they hadn't stayed connected with the family business and the
yeah,
family
that's a
project. So it's, hey, Zeph would have never had enough market for 5 orchards worth of fruit and been able to invest in a multi-million-dollar packing house and all of that had he been just, if I'd have kicked him out at 18 and said, hey, go do your thing, even
mm,
if he had the work ethic and the knowledge, it would have taken years longer.
yeah. Oh yeah. That's
And,
it's such a
in the same, but being able to work together and create, and we actually work together with it's a larger family than that because I actually have, you know, my brother and his family and my sister's son and his family multi-generationally involved. So there's like 7 or 8 families now that have grown up and are all have their own families
that's
that
great.
are involved in some level in Azure. So it's become a beautiful thing working together. You don't,
And there's
multi-generational family business can happen, and are ways to do that.
I bet there's some sandpaper moments too, refining moments. I mean, there have to be.
There's
Yeah.
hard time. There
Yeah.
there was some hard times. There was some disagreements.
Yeah.
It has
It's,
taken some learning,
mm,
and we still don't agree about every direction and everything.
yep.
But we have to agree on a process, how
And
that
agree
works
to
and who makes the final decisions on these things.
right for sure. But also that it's part of growing. I mean, disagreements, I tend to be of the philosophy that disagreements are not necessarily a bad thing. They just can't overwhelm and overcome everything. They have to be, like you said, a process. You have to be able to work through them. You have to be able to have a conversation. And at some point, it has to come to a resolution. And there has to be a way for that resolution to be acceptable to everybody. But
Yeah,
I can
and
tell you,
it has to be, and we have to agree on the buck stops here with somebody has to make a final decision, just like in a company.
that's right.
It has to go up and hopefully very, very few things actually make it to the CEO. But
Well, and
if it makes it to the CEO, then it's either a new thing or something that's major, or you don't have people in the right positions on the bus.
that's
And
right.
it's the same in the family structure and the family. Each person has their area of responsibility. And as dad, I want to hear, we want to talk things over. I want to talk things over with my daughter that's doing a bakery, and I want to give her as much teaching as I possibly
Wisdom.
can. But
Yeah,
I want her to make the decisions.
that's good.
I don't want to have to make the decisions for her because then she's not learning to make the decisions. And
Well,
I even allow small mistakes because that's how
exactly. That's how you
things.
learn. I have a friend. It's so funny you should say this. A girl that I grew up with, and we were literally, we've known each other since we were 3 years old. We went to Helen's daycare together. And her granddaddy had a garden plot right behind the fence at Helen's daycare. And we would
Okay.
always stand at the fence trying to get him to come get us. But I was the outgoing at one, and she was more quiet. And they always said I had gumption. She has gumption, but it's to me that is part of what it is that helps families and people get through things. It's everybody has to have a way of being heard, and I think if you're heard, and you work through these problems and your challenges, but as long as everybody feels heard, I think everybody can get through it. That's how it is around here.
I think that that's pretty accurate. I mean, I can't say that we learned that in a day.
No, you don't.
It took a little bit of, it took a
Life.
few issues and some life to make that happen.
Yep.
But we found that as we put processes around it, and so there were not expectations that could not be fulfilled and things like that, that the expectations were clear
Yep.
and job descriptions, so to speak, were given to each person that wanted to work in the company or in the family business,
That's so good.
that they knew what their lane was, then it became way, way easier.
One of the things you said a second ago that I really I loved hearing was that you said if everything has to go to the CEO, then I don't have the right people in the right places on the bus. And that says that you're empowering them to make some decisions on their own and to learn through those decisions. My friend Lisa that I was just telling you about, her grandparents made all the decisions for her. I mean, she couldn't, every time she made a decision, they second guessed her. And I always said that sabotaged her. It totally sabotaged her ability to make a decision, because when you do that, you're telling your children they're not good at making decisions and that they need you to help them make decisions. I learned that from watching them. And so I loved hearing that you said that you'd have people in the right place on the bus and that they should be making those decisions. That's good stuff. That's, to me, that's what it's all about.
And even as we're homeschooling our kids, especially as they get into the extracurricular activities, and and like I mentioned with my older sons, maybe that was, hauling rocks and, building fences. But
hard
I had
work.
to let them learn how to do it wrong
Yeah.
too. I don't, and some of those things, they probably at this point they know how to do those things way better than I do. My son knows how to orchard 100 times better than I do at this point. You're teaching them how to learn.
Yeah.
My other son knows how to, sure, my daughter knows how to bake bread way a lot better than I do. Guaranteed.
We were talking earlier about the farm and what we've got going on, and that I'm having to learn about this Haney test. Matter of fact, just got an email from my son. I saw it come in, Haney soil interpretation. So I have my son out there, the one that's here, that's in IT. I have him looking at the Haney report for me. But the part of learning to me is a lifelong endeavor. I mean, it's never stopping. So if you stop learning, you kind of,
We're either growing or we're dying.
that's right.
And I think, and that's one of the things that homeschooling is so beautiful about, is because it is not a huge change. I think there's this huge shock when children go to formal school and then they're out of school, whether that's at 18 or they decide to go for another 4 years or another 6 years or whatever. Whenever that happens and they get out, then there's suddenly this huge shock. I'm a learner. Now I'm no longer a learner. But with homeschooling, it never really happens that way.
Right.
you teach them how to learn, and they continue to learn throughout. So they're learning and doing, learning and doing, learning and doing, and it becomes lifelong, and it becomes a lifelong endeavor. And they don't, they don't need to, there's no shock when,
Right.
it just kind of school in our many times, on some of them we did have graduation, so to speak, but basically in real life, school just kind of faded away.
Yeah.
It wasn't like we were going gangbusters up until your senior year and then you were done.
Right.
No, you started doing. So then we did school, like I say, half days. And then it went to half days only 6 months out of the year. And then it went to, maybe half days, 3 days a week. And then, and eventually by the time they were seniors, they were maybe just kind of, oh, well, here I'm doing school on rainy days.
There you go.
And that's kind of the way that it went for most of our children. It wasn't like, when they're really young, yeah, you're, until they learn to read and some of
Right.
that, you're
That's
really
right.
concentrating on those things. But as they get older, school, instead of taking, it became less and less dominant.
How did you figure out their passions? How did they figure out their passions? Because you is part of your schooling is based on what I'm hearing is you allowed them to follow their passions. How did they find those? Was it were different paths
I'm
to
not
it?
100% sure. We allowed them to try a lot of various variable things.
Yep.
They all got to work in various aspects of the business, in
Mhm.
agriculture, in the warehouse. Every one of them got to pull orders. None of them were exempt from doing that at some point in
None of
time.
them none of them are there either now. They didn't have to pull orders forever, but they do that.
No, none of
Yep.
them are pulling orders
Yep.
now.
Yep.
Zach is overseeing about 3 levels higher the people that pull orders.
Yep.
He's responsible for them, but he's responsible for their manager, their manager, and their manager. So I think, yeah, at
Yeah.
least three levels in between at this point. But they all got to do that.
Mhm.
And hey, and they all know that if something comes up, we would still do that today.
That's right. You have to jump in.
If
Mhm.
something came up and all the people had to call in sick for a day because, or a few days, I mean, we had to do it just 4 years ago during COVID when we
Yep.
had people that all, you know, got exposed to COVID and had to take off a bunch
Yeah.
of time by law. I
Right.
brought all the kids over there, including nieces and nephews and everybody, and we pulled the orders.
There you go. And honestly, it's good for them. It's good to remember what it's like to have to do that, because I think it makes you a better manager when you're above them, 4 levels, right?
Yeah,
So
no,
it's
and they all know how to do those things. They all know how to pack grain,
Mhm.
um, how to grind flour, all of those
Amazing.
things.
That's
They all
amazing.
know how to they all know how to work in the greenhouse. I think every one of them went through helping in the greenhouse at some point,
That's
transplanting or planting or some of that.
that was my
Um,
philosophy too, was to introduce them. I felt like at some point you become almost more of a where you're corralling their interest in helping expose them to new things rather than just being a teacher. There is a stage where you're teaching and books are open, butts and seats, and you're kind of doing like you were talking about economics or history or math or whatever. But at some point you do become more almost like their coordinator. You're facilitating that learning and giving them those opportunities and those experiences. And that's exactly when you said that, I was like, yep, that's exactly how my kids found it too. My oldest, I'll tell a silly story. My oldest is into gaming. Well, all of my kids honestly are into gaming. I think it's everybody does things
Part
differently.
of the IT thing. Oh,
Yes. And he actually had a family that he that was part of Minecraft, and they were homeschoolers. They're down in Alabama. They actually also have a multi-generational homestead. I won't say that they're not like y'all. They don't have farms. It's not 4,000 acres, but they do have the multi-generation. There's grandparents all the way down to great grandkids on the farm. So they're kind of doing the same thing. But the dad was the director of IT at Regions Bank, but he was also the person that started Scrafty, this cute little Minecraft company. And my son decided he wasn't into the gaming part. He wanted to understand how the gaming worked. And so he was always playing with things and tweaking things. He ended up blowing up their hub by accident.
Okay.
And the owner, guy named Brian Six, he said, you know what? He said, I love to see how far the kids push it. He said, I'll just roll it back. It's no big deal. He was so good to them and giving them the luxury of making mistakes, like we were talking about. Made a huge mistake, totally messed up, their hub, but luckily he could just roll it back for a couple of minutes and got it back. But
You
that's not
know,
necessarily an experience I'm proud of, but he says that was actually part of why he loves IT, was having an environment where he could do stupid things like that. So I was like, okay.
well, and I think that homeschooling parents can do this even if they're not on a farm.
That's
You
right.
don't have to be on a farm to do that and create a work school
That's right.
balance.
I agree.
There's plenty, yes, they can't get a job, so to speak, when they're, 10 years old, but they can run their own lawn mowing company.
That's right.
And
That's exactly right.
they can
Lemonade
work,
stand.
they can do a lemonade stand. They can clean houses for the neighbors.
Pet sit.
Nobody's pet sit,
Oh my
babysit,
goodness.
all
Yep.
those things. And there's a great demand for that. There is no shortage of that kind of work for
That's
10
right.
and 10 to 12-year olds.
I
I mean,
love it.
they kind of have to do it, as they're their own entrepreneur in that sense, but it sets them up to kind of know where their passions are and to eventually they can prepare themselves and go into a particular field, whether in your case of your son that was an IT type of a field because he got a job in a Minecraft store or
I know.
place,
Right.
his part-time after school job. But if they're homeschooled, there's plenty of people that would love to hire
No,
your kids
that's right.
to, if they're not being unreasonable about it, that to do specific jobs,
I
you
agree a
know.
1000%. And I actually think that that's probably, I hope people take that away from this conversation, is that they need to find those opportunities or help their children find those opportunities, um, and explore them. That was one of my favorite parts for me, was to help my kids find their passions. And that's why I asked you that question. It's like, how do they know that? I have one that's a really, really good photographer. Ironically, my dad was a photographer. I'm not a
Oh,
photographer. I literally skipped my generation, I guess. But he got that bug. He loves photography. He is an IT guy. He's actually the one that blew up the hub. But if he ever had it, we don't necessarily know what these experiences are going to lead to. They could lead to a job, in their career, but it also could lead to a hobby and a pastime that's very fulfilling. So, or a girlfriend, you never know. I mean, we have no idea what it's going to introduce them to. So I was always very, very big on introducing experiences to my kids. I love that that's how you did it too, even though it was a different environment. Ours was very much, even though we have a farm, we call ourselves gentlemen farmers. We're not very good at it. So, the name of my farm is Live and Learn Farm, if that tells you anything.
okay.
All the
Yeah, well,
mistakes
hey.
we've made.
We
But
all do that. Hopefully, like I say, if you stop learning, you're probably dead.
yep, yep. But it's for me, that was part of it. I'm a lifelong learner, and I still am learning. A lot of it is through trial and error. It's just what it is. So if I know you taught the entrepreneur side and the farming side, were there any subjects that you particularly love to teach?
Well, really, the only subjects that I did teach very much, a little bit of science, but mostly it was history and economics. My wife was pretty good at all the rest,
Mhm.
but she never liked history. And so, I mean, she would let them read, through history type books,
Right.
but really getting deep into history, that was Sunday school, we called it,
Yep.
because kind of tongue in cheek, because we go to church on Saturday, not Sunday.
Right.
So, but usually if I'm gonna be able to take a day off, it'll be Sunday other than that day. So I often can take Sunday off. So it's also the day that we work together as a family. and we will, garden and do all that and clean up the yard
Maintain
and
everything.
prune and all of that kind of stuff. But in the winter, particularly when the garden's in, kind of finished and stuff, or cold and rainy days, then we will do those subjects. In fact, just this last Sunday, we had the pleasure of doing that with my two youngest.
Oh,
I ran them through basic economics. So we did an economics class, and I still need to get a little bit deeper. They'll get deeper into it too, but you know, what a budget is, what a general ledger is, what all that looks like, what what becomes your profit and loss statement,
good
all of
stuff.
those kinds of things, just the basic stuff of economics. That's what we just did this Sunday because we had kind of it's a little early in the fall. A lot of times we'd be picking stuff, but we had it was like 40-mile-an-hour winds this
Oh,
week. So it was kind of
good
nasty
time to be
out. So
inside.
we
Mhm.
did, yeah, we did our Sunday school thing. And, and that's kind of the way I typically do it for what I teach.
Right.
Pretty much just those subjects, business, economics, and history. My
Mm.
wife teaches all the rest for the most part.
Sounds like y'all have a really good system down and that y'all complement each other as to how you do things and what you do. And it sounds like y'all have had to compromise too. So that's good stuff too. You're modeling. You're modeling it for the kids.
Yeah, we have, and we always are kind of teasing each other back and forth. You get them or I get them. Yeah.
So
Oh,
if your wife were sitting here, what would if somebody asked them for some words of wisdom about homeschooling, what do you think your wife would say? What would you say?
don't stress it and don't feel like you have to be qualified. That's not really what makes homeschooling good or not. It's the relationship and the interaction that you have with the children in a learning environment. It really is.
Yeah.
And you're not necessarily preparing your children to go to college like a high school is. You
Mhm.
need to look at preparing them for life. If they decide to go to college, they will have no problem.
Yeah.
I only had one of my children choose to go to college because, and he pulled a 4.0 for 4 years in college
That's great.
based on the homeschool knowledge that he already had.
Right. That's
It
great.
wasn't, he had no serious trouble, making his grades in college because he didn't have enough homeschool education because he'd only done half days. It wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
So, he had, and nor did he have trouble passing the entrance exam. Yes, he had to do a little quick study because it was often a little different stuff,
Right.
but he knew how to learn.
That's
So
right.
he took a couple of quick courses on college entrance exams, and after he did that, he aced the exam no problem.
That's great.
But
That's great.
he wanted to go to college more for sports, truthfully, than he did to get a degree
Oh yeah.
because he wanted to do college sports. And they paid 100% of his college. He had that too because
That's why my kids went. My husband works he's the director of IT. Hello, IT seems to running our family.
it sounds
He's
like
director
it.
of IT at Christian Brothers University. And so we got free tuition. And so that was my philosophy. I was like, guys, y'all have free tuition. So why not go? So all of my kids went. My youngest, who's the arguer of the family, I always pick on him. He wants to go to law school and he's a senior right now, but studying for the LSAT as we speak. And so I'm like,
Well,
that's
he
just
can
perfect.
actually he can actually do a lot of law school or the prerequisites as a part of the homeschool
Yeah.
now if he wants to.
Yeah.
But anyway, the rest of my children, all of them decided they wanted to start life. They didn't want to go to college. They wanted to get started. And it hasn't been any kind of it hasn't been a disadvantage.
No,
They've
it
all
sounds like
been,
how many of them
they've
have
all been able to.
businesses? You have at least three that we were talking about all have businesses. So that's amazing.
Well, almost all of them actually have businesses in some form,
Isn't that amazing?
or they work, or they're partnered on businesses with each other.
Well, your entrepreneur
So,
class worked really well. I'm just telling you. Maybe you need to can that. Oh my
well,
goodness.
all right.
Well, it has been so fun talking to you and learning about your homeschool and how y'all worked through the farm and using it as part of your incubator. I call it your incubator for your homeschool. So it's so interesting. One of my favorite parts of doing the podcast is interviewing people and finding out how they homeschool because everybody does it so different. But yet we all seem to have these little threads, like the interest led, and sounds like you had a lot of interest led in your school. So do we. And so it's so interesting to hear how other people do it. And like you said, there's no one right way. There's, I always hate to be put on the spot where people say, what's the best curriculum for this? And I'm like, the one that works. I don't know. There's
Yeah, no, there's not a perfect system,
no.
and there's not even a broken system. I mean, as long as you're doing it,
That's right.
as long as they learn how to read and how to learn, you've pretty much got it.
That's right. Reading's the foundation. They can't do anything else until they learn to read. So I was the same way. Reading was my very first thing. Matter of fact, it was even before spelling. Reading was the first thing, sounding things out and learning to read. But that's foundational. And then everything else comes, like you said, it just, once you can read, you can do all things. So yeah.
Yeah, and you just help guide that just a little bit. Try to create some balance so that there's some balanced exposure, and you're fine.
We having boys, I have all boys, 3 boys. And so we were big into STEM because they loved, experiments. They loved touching
Mhm.
things and, doing things. So we did a lot of that type of homeschooling, where it was interest led. It might be something they were curious about. Like, we get outside and we find something, and we used our garden as our outdoor classroom. That was, we
Sure.
didn't actually study botany. We lived botany and then got the botany book out and figured out what was going on, so
Mhm.
yeah, I love that. But I think everybody has to find their rhythm. And I know that the first year is always the most, that year is the year that everybody's like, say, I call it the year of second guesses because everybody second guesses everything they do that first year. But
Well, it's easier if you start from the very, very beginning
yeah.
because you just have a little kindergartner, so to
And
speak,
there's
and you
so
don't
much
have to
fun.
you don't have to stress about it very much. But I do feel for parents that take their children out of formal
It
school.
is hard.
It makes it a little bit harder. We did not do that, but I do have some good friends. And actually, my parents did that with my youngest 2 siblings, took them out of
Mm,
school at a later date. I didn't finish school, but I didn't homeschool either. I
right.
mean, I guess I
You,
did
you
from
moved
the
into
outdoor.
the farm life.
I moved into real life immediately, the but they did that. So I saw the difficulty of trying, because a lot of them make the mistake of trying to duplicate
Right.
what they
It's what they know.
experienced in the classroom.
It's what they know. I know.
And that's not necessarily what has to happen.
I agree. We did the Montessori school. So, like I said, my 2 oldest, Chase and Gage. I think Chase was in the 4th grade, and Gage was going into the 3rd grade, and Blake was in kindergarten, so he had not learned to read yet. So I did have to teach to read, but
Mhm.
it was really interesting because when I brought them home, my oldest Chase, the one that blew up the Minecraft hub, he said, Mom, are you sure you know how to teach? You don't have any certifications to teach. And I said, you don't have to. And so he was watching me as much as I didn't know this, but he was watching me as I was teaching his youngest one, and his brother, Blake. And I taught him how to tell time. That was the first
Mhm.
thing, was just literally learning how to tell time. Because time is a hard concept to teach little ones. I mean, I'm sure you know that time is difficult. It's one of the most challenging things to teach. And so I started with time because he wanted to understand time. He was chasing his older brother. And I remember vividly Chase walking in and going, okay, I'm impressed. I guess we could try this thing.
Oh, cool.
So funny. But it was so funny to hear a 4th grader telling me that he was impressed with me and that I could teach. So it's so much fun. Y'all, if you have any desire to homeschool and you're afraid to do it, please reach out to me. I promise you, I will encourage you and I'll give you every idea I possibly can to help you get started. So, but David, thank you so much for your time today. I have so enjoyed getting to know more
Thank you,
about your
and
family and more
thanks
about
you
your
for having
homeschool.
me.
And we will be talking to another one of his team members next month. But you have a wonderful day, David. And thank you guys for being here. We really appreciate it. If I have not said it, let's say it one more time, AzureStandard.com. If you have not heard of them, there will be a link in the show notes that gives you a 15% off. So be sure to check that out below. And be sure to check out some of their new stuff. They're doing the wellness products. And he mentioned some baked bread. I'm like, sourdough? We got some sourdough
Gonna be
coming.
sourdough bread coming down the pike here very soon.
I'm going to be looking for that. I'm going to be the first one looking for it. Nobody else knows about it yet. This one won't go out for a month. So I'm going to be on the sourdough before everybody else can get there.
All right.
But
Yeah,
anyway, y'all have a wonderful day. And we will be back to have another homeschool conversation soon. Y'all have a great day. Thanks, David.
thank you.
Thanks for joining me here for this homeschool conversation. If this is your first time here, I'd love for you to join and subscribe so we can keep walking this journey together. And if today's episode encouraged you, please share it with a friend because homeschooling is better when we lift each other up. Keep learning, keep wondering, most of all, keep showing up. You're doing something amazing, Mom. See you next time.